Hey guys, so it's been a couple of weeks since we sat down and talked about anything to do with the fiber arts. And so today I want to catch you up on all the things that I've been doing this summer with natural dyeing and the unexpected lessons that I learned from all of that. Hey guys, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about something to do with the fiber arts, either knitting or spinning or weaving or dyeing. Today we're going to talk about natural dyeing because that's what we've been doing for 10 weeks now at the School of SweetGeorgia and here at the studio. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. So basically with the School of SweetGeorgia, we have been putting out dyeing classes since the beginning. The very first class we did was an acid dyeing class. And then after that, then the following summer, we made fiber reactive dye classes. And now this summer, we've made natural dye classes. So we worked together with Caitlin French, who's a local dyer. She's an artist, and she taught us the basics of natural dyeing, dyeing with extracts, dyeing with plants. And then we did 2 classes with Kathy Hattori from Botanical Colors. And so Kathy taught us about hand painting with natural dye extracts and then also doing an indigo dye vat. So we learned how to make indigo and all that kind of stuff this summer. And then just recently, this past week, we released another course with Caitlin, and that one is about how to grow your own natural dye garden and also how to wildcraft, so how to gather plants from your local land base in order to use for dyeing. So we have quite a number of courses that are available this year with natural dyeing. And so as a way of helping people work through all of that natural dye content, we created a study group to work through all the content week by week by week. And so the first week we're looking at, gathering materials. Second week we look at scouring. What does that mean? And then we learn about mordanting, all the different ways of mordanting cotton fabric, cotton yarn, wool, silk, and what each different fiber needs. And then week by week, we're looking at, dyeing with reds and dyeing with yellows and dyeing with purples and pinks and everything. And so you can see this is the pile of yarn that I made this summer. I dyed a ton of yarn. I mordanted and scoured all of these yarns at the very beginning. I just scoured a huge batch of yarn to begin with so that I would have a lot of stuff to work with throughout the summer. And so as the weeks would go on, I would basically drop 2 skeins in this pot and 1 skein in that pot, and different colors and things like that, and just proceed that way. And so that's how I came out with all of these different colors. And in some cases, I over dyed some of the skeins in indigo to get blues and to get green colors and things like that. There's some skeins in here that I over dyed in iron. So taking like really, it's ground iron ferrous sulfate pieces, and then you just heat it up in solution, and then you dip your dyed skeins into it, and it will sadden the colors and make it a little bit more muted, more dull, more gray, and just really soften a lot of the colors. In some cases it'll take yellow and make it green, things like that. So we're experimenting with a lot of stuff like that over the summer. So you can see even this color. This color is this beautiful limey, chartreusey kind of green, and that came from this yellow. This yellow was dyed with weld, which is a plant. And so taking weld and dyeing it to make it this yellow, and then over dyeing it in iron to make it green. So stuff like that, experimenting with a lot of things like that. Super fun. I also managed to dye a whole bunch of yardage. So this is linen fabric, white linen fabric that I scoured and then mordanted and then dyed. This one is dyed in both cochineal and logwood. So you can see sort of the color that's come out of this. I was going to sew this into a dress. I was going to make the emerald dress by Made by Ray. It's a pattern by Made by Ray. But yeah, this is all fabric that is ready to be sewn up. There's another batch of linen fabric here. This is actually linen and cotton mixed together, I believe it is, but it comes as this natural oatmeal color. And then taking this natural oatmeal color, scouring it, mordanting it, and then dyeing it in lac. And so this is lac that I bought from Botanical Colors. It makes for a really, really sort of crimson cranberry red kind of color. So yeah, these fabrics are going to get rinsed again, and then I'll dry them out, iron them, make them nice and flat, and then I'm gonna sew them. I think this one is destined to become a spinning apron. So what I want to do is I want to make one of those aprons with the cross back, and then just basically wear it when I'm spinning so that it catches any random fiber that's flying around and stuff like that, and so I can see my spinning a little bit easier as well. So that is what that is going to become. But I also use some of the techniques to figure out how to do hand-painted sock blanks with natural dye. So that was one of the experiments that I did. That's one of them. And then this is the other one that came out. And in some cases, I'm just sprinkling dye powder onto the sock blank and seeing what happens with all of that. So this is all super, super fun. And again, you know, with Caitlin teaching us how to grow our own natural dye gardens, one of the things that she did early on in the summer was that she gave me some of her natural dye plants. So I received indigo plants, madder plants, Coreopsis, Coreopsis, and then Dyer's chamomile. And so I have those 4 plants are growing in the garden right now, and they grow really well. They grow really easily, which is surprising because I am terrible at growing anything. But these things are just growing on their own without very much intervention from me. And so it's given me a lot of confidence to think that, hey, we could probably grow some of these dye plants outside our studio and then harvest them and maybe dye with them next summer. So next summer, we're looking at doing another sort of study group, taking all of these things a little bit further, like maybe looking at eco-printing with actual flowers, doing all sorts of different things that you can do. So basically dyeing a garden, harvesting the color, maybe using indigo, fresh indigo, all of that kind of stuff. But we have had a really, really cool time over the past 10 weeks at the studio with many of the people here on the team doing their own dyeing every week. Yeah, everybody's been dyeing their own skeins. Some people have been dyeing their own hand-spun skeins. People have been dyeing fabric. People have been over-dyeing clothes. Like, it's just been week after week after week. Everybody's been participating and doing something with their natural dyeing, which has been really, really exciting. I'll show you the last piece that we made was we started to do some Shibori techniques, which is basically taking a cloth and then folding it or pleating it or binding it in some way to create some resist areas, and then taking that bound up cloth and then dipping it in indigo. And so this is the one that I made. I used a Narashi Shibori technique, which is where you take your scarf and you basically fold it and wind it around a pole. So I was using a PVC pipe, like a 3-inch pipe. If you were to do this, I would advise a larger size pipe, but I used about a 3-inch diameter pipe and then wrapped my cloth around it and then sort of scrunched it all together in order to make a resist, which looks like these kind of tiger stripes, really. And then I dipped this whole thing in an indigo vat that we made, and I dipped it 5 times in order to get this color. But you know, I wish I had dipped it so many more times to make it even darker. But you can see this is the kind of cool effect that's come out of that. So yeah, you can see this beautiful mountain of colors that I've created, beautiful mountain of yarn. It was super fun to make. Putting colors on it week by week, overlapping colors, all of that kind of stuff. Yes, there was a lot of learning around that. I think one of the things that was most unexpected for me was the other lessons that I learned through natural dyeing. And these aren't natural dyeing lessons. These were more like life lessons that I didn't realize I was going to be confronted with. So it took me quite by surprise. But the first few weeks of working with natural dyeing, you don't work with any color. You're working with, you know, undyed yarn like this, like a nice skein of undyed yarn, and then you have to scour it. And scouring basically means heating it up with some sort of a soap or some sort of a detergent that's going to help remove any dust, any oil, any dirt, getting rid of all of the things that might accidentally bind to your natural dye instead of having the actual yarn bind to the natural dye. And so you want to scour it to make sure it's really, really clean, so that way you can maximize how much binding is happening with the color. Otherwise, if you don't scour well, then the color might rub off onto your fingers, it might crock, or you might wash it later on and then there's going to be a lighter color because it hasn't bound really, really well to the yarn. And so scouring is so vitally, vitally important to the process, and it can affect whether or not your skein looks blotchy, whether or not it looks pale. So many things affected by this invisible process of scouring and basically washing your yarn. And then the next step is to mordant the yarn, which is the fact that natural dyes don't naturally stick to the fiber. They don't really have an affinity for the fiber. And so the mordant is like a glue. It's a catalyst, it's like a glue that makes the two things want to stick together. So the mordant, we're using aluminum sulfate for the wool, or we're using aluminum acetate for cellulose fibers like cotton or linen. So there's these two different mordants that we're using, and these two mordants are also clear. So when you're trying to cook it with this mordant, and you want to make sure that it's properly covered, and you want to make sure that every inch of this has been evenly covered with mordant, this is a little bit anxiety causing for me, at least, because how well you mordant your yarn also affects how good your color comes out in the end. So if you do a sloppy job of the mordanting, or you don't flip the yarn enough, or you don't let it sit for long enough, then all of those things can affect your final color. And then maybe your color's not as bright as it could be. Maybe it's not as saturated as it could be. So I found all of these steps to be causing more anxiety than I had anticipated. And it made me feel extremely uncomfortable, not having control over what the outcome was going to look like, not having any control over seeing how it was going to turn out in the end. This was a big challenge for me. I think with these particular invisible processes, for me, it triggered a lot of things because, you know, I'm a mom with young kids, and I think a lot about how things that I do today, I am not necessarily going to see the results of those until maybe years down the line, until maybe they become grown-ups. And there's a lot of, you know, wanting to make sure that you're doing the best job that you can, but not knowing if what you're doing is going to be good enough, and there's never enough. And it's the same thing with this yarn. Like when you mordant it, you could mordant it for 1 hour, or you could mordant it for 2 hours, or you could let it sit overnight, or you could let it sit for a week, or you could let it sit for a couple of weeks. Everything that you do that makes it a little bit longer, a little bit more, could make it a little bit better. And there's just has to be a certain point where you're saying, well, what I've done is enough. And that was a hard thing to learn. That was a hard thing to be exposed to. So there was that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that with natural dyeing, the colors that you mix in the dye stock solution, the colors that are initially on the yarn, initially in the pot even, they are not how things actually turn out. There's a huge difference between what it looks like in the pot, and then after it's been dyed and then dried, the color will shift and change, often dramatically. And so what you see is not what you get. And again, it is about relinquishing control over how things will look at the end of the day, being okay that that things shift and change, and when they dry significantly lighter, that they don't look like what you expect them to look like, and to be okay with that. Again, this is another unexpected life lesson that I had not intended on experiencing when I started this natural dye study group. I was learning about natural dyes and how plants make color, but instead I learned all of these other things about how to let go of the illusion of control, how to deal with the impermanence of things, like the impermanence of color, the fact that these colors may fade, they may change over time. If you let it sit in the sunlight, they will bleach out and they will lose color, so you don't want to do that. But also that even just over time, they may change their appearance, and to be okay with that, to be okay with things dying and things fading and things evolving and changing, just like seasons change, just like flowers die. I think there's a little bit of a lesson of looking at things in the moment, the way they are in the moment, and appreciating what they are at the moment that you're looking at it. So if the cochineal in the pot is like really vibrant and pink and beautiful, to just enjoy that feeling, because when you take it out of the pot and you let it dry, the color will change and it'll shift and it'll become something different, and it might become something that you like or don't like, but it will be different, and to be okay with that. I think one of the things for me is that I have started from sort of a an acid dyeing background where I can measure out precisely what's going to go on what and what that is going to look like at the end of the day. I can predict what the depth of shade is going to be. I can mix and blend, and I can see what is happening. And so I think I have had the luxury of being able to experience the sense of control over what you see is what you get, and over the placement of color. And so to come into a practice that is somewhat mystical, it's somewhat, there's mystery around it. It's mysterious how things become these things, and how the colors that are being created are going to change and shift and blend, and that they have a life of their own. I think, again, this is all a big life lesson. You cannot control this as much as you think that you would like to, and to be okay with that. Life is not under your control. Things are not under control, and you have to kind of just go where it leads you, and to enjoy every moment along the way. So that is what I learned this summer doing all of this natural dyeing. If you've joined us on the School of Sweet Georgia, you can follow along with all of this instruction week by week by week. You can see a lot of the experiments that people have done in the study group. You can see the most amazing experiments that people have done with trying different mordants, these scientific experiments almost. And other people are very much more free and carefree and random about how they've dyed their things. A lot of people have done this natural dyeing as the first ever dyeing that they've ever done. And so this is just, it's been a really wonderful experience to do this with such an engaged group of people. So if you are at all interested in learning about natural dyeing, I encourage you to pop into the school, check out the courses, check out the study group. It's going to continue to be open, and people will have discussions as they continue to dye throughout the year. But next year we'll start a new study group, and we'll focus on something else about natural dyeing, or another kind of dyeing practice. Maybe it'll be fiber reactive dyes, maybe it'll be acid dyes, maybe it'll be something. In any case, we will do some kind of a dyeing study group next summer, so we'll look for that again. Now, in the meantime, I did want to mention that we have a new study group starting up at September 1st, and it's going to be a spinning study group. So if you are interested in learning how to improve your spinning, then you can join us for that. So Greta and Vicky from our school, they're going to be leading this study group. It's going to go on for about 2 months or so, September, October this year, and basically week by week by week, there's going to be sort of some guidance, some assignments. Go check out this video, go check out that article, things like that, and then getting you to sample. And so the whole idea of this particular study group is to look at making a yarn that you want for a project and going through the sampling process to get to that point. So looking at what your drafting technique might be, looking at what your fiber prep technique might be, looking very specifically at how you draft, where that fiber is in your fingers, all of that kind of stuff. So that is all going to be happening starting September 1st. So if you're interested in joining the school, we do have a promotion going on right now. And so you can check that out at the schoolofsweetgeorgia.com. So that is basically it for today. If you like this video, please do hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please do hit subscribe. And we come here every Friday to talk about something to do with the fiber arts. Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to leave you with some shots of what we were doing in the studio this summer with our indigo vats and with the team dyeing and everything like that. And I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.